Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Spike and Drew, Pretty Maids all in a row. Written by Christopher Golden. Read by Logan Adams. An original novel based on the hit TV series created by Joss Whedon. Prologue. New York City, USA, March 9th, 1940. New York City, center of the universe. He stood on the corner at 6th Avenue and 36th Street and looked north. Night had long since fallen, but the lights of this extraordinary city still burned. People milled about in fancy dress, searching for more of the nightlife now that the evening's shows had all let out. It was still early in 1940, but the Depression was long since over. Prohibition was over. In Europe, a dark cloud hung over every nation. The German invasion of Poland the previous September had prompted France and Britain to declare war, but there had been little action in Europe since then. Still, it was inevitable. War would come. Its specter loomed ever larger, ever more imminent in Europe. But here in America, there was a pride and a confidence that was unlike anything he had ever seen. Were they ignorant, these Americans, or simply arrogant? Whatever the answer, one thing was clear to him. With its vibrant color and electric crackle of life, America had become the new empire, and none of the European nations, neither the home of Hitler nor his critics, was truly aware of it yet. As he watched the people walk past, the men in their striped suits and bowlers, the women in their expensive dresses and wraps, he wondered if even these Americans quite understood the shift in the world that had come since the Great War had devastated Europe 20 years before. With a snicker, he shook his head. "Why go to America?" the love of his life had asked. He had led her to the window and drawn back the curtains to reveal the gray pallor of an anxious London below. "Have a look, pet," he had told her. "Do the poor sods down there look like they're having even a bit of fun? They're so grave and frumpy these days. It's almost enough to make me pity them before they bleed. Let's have a little fun, shall we?" The savage smile that played at the corners of her lips then enticed him, and he fell upon her there in the wan light from a cloud-shrouded moon. They made love with a furious abandon, and she hurt him, tearing at the skin on his back with her talons. Even now he shivered at the memory of that delicious pain. New York had been everything they had dreamed. Parties and music and young debutantes flushed with red life and exuberance. A hunter's paradise. 4 months later she was bored. "You'd think living forever would give the girl a bit of patience," he whispered to himself as he stood in the cool breeze that swept down 6th Avenue, as if someone were there to appreciate the irony in his voice. The wind blew again. He was exposed where he stood on the corner, and he turned up his collar to stave off the chill. With a quick tug he set his hat more firmly on his head. It had once belonged to a gray-haired gentleman who had not wanted to part with it. There were only 2 small drops of blood staining the brim. At that moment, the object of his loitering appeared on the opposite corner. Adrienne Montclair was a devious old bitch with the face of an 18-year-old and the heart of a killer. He admired her for it, but trusted her not at all. Her blonde hair flew behind her, much longer than the cultivated bob so fashionable among Manhattan's female population. With the wind pasting her scarlet cloak to her body, Adrienne had a sultry vitality that their kind so rarely exhibited. She looked so very alive. Just a short way down the block, he crossed the street and went to the restaurant and pub called Keen's Chop House. He watched to be certain he had not been followed. Their meeting was to be private. No observers, well, none other than the humans, who would have no idea what they were seeing. 2 minutes after Miss Montclair entered Keen's, he followed. The door swung open before him, and he descended a few steps to the foyer. Smoke billowed around him. Keen's was famous among New York's elite for its steak, its wood and brass atmosphere, and for the thousands of corncob pipes that hung from hooks on the ceiling. Each pipe had a number, and each number corresponded to one of the restaurant's regular patrons. Theodore Roosevelt had dined here, and there was his pipe to prove it. Buffalo Bill Cody had left a pipe behind when he died. The roar of men speaking of their fortunes, blathering about their businesses or their wives or mistresses, about baseball or the tensions in Europe, it would have been amusing if not for the cloud of smoke. He was grateful that he did not have the burden of needing to breathe. The maitre d' snapped to attention as he removed his bowler. "May I help you, sir?" "I'm here to meet Miss Montclair for dinner," he replied. The man stood a little straighter, chin a little higher, though whether the reaction had to do with respect for Adrien Montclair or the dignity he had found most Americans associated with his accent, he could not say. "Right this way, sir." Adrien's table was at the back of the restaurant against the wall opposite the entry. A private booth, though not so private that other patrons would not send curious glances at the young man dining with one of the city's most notoriously wealthy debutantes. She smiled as he approached, her teeth perfectly white. "Hello, William," she said, voice as raspy as he recalled, eyes dancing with sinister intent. Miss Montclair offered her hand and he took it, held it up to be kissed. The Mayor D hurried away as he sat across from her. "Adrien, lovely to see you. How long has it been?" 35 years, William. You're as handsome as ever." "And you're as ravishing, love," he replied. "But let's skip the niceties, eh? You know bloody well I don't use that name anymore." A petulant pout reformed her thick red lips, but it was insincere. "You know I hate that sobriquet of yours, Spike. Wherever did you pick up such a crude nickname?" He grinned at that, his thin face appearing almost skeletal in the dim light and the smoke. "Let's just say I used to work on the railroad." A silent moment passed between them, and Adrien's expression was grave. At length she sat up a bit straighter, but remained silent. A waiter came and they ordered drinks. He was back swiftly, but when he departed, she only looked at her drink. "Are you going to tell me why you wanted to see me, or am I meant to guess?" she asked, a bit curt. Spike sipped from a pint of warm beer. Not quite like home, but not bad either. His gaze darted around, glancing at the other patrons, wondering if anybody nearby was not what he appeared to be. If there was anyone else there who would understand what they were speaking of, enough to benefit from it. Eventually he decided there was nothing to be done for it. "I wanted to do something for Drusilla," he said. "Are you still with that cow?" Adrien asked, playful and cruel as a kitten. Spike narrowed his eyes, gave her a look that told her another such remark would cost her her life. Adrien only smiled obtusely, pushed her luxurious hair away from her face, and tilted her head as she regarded him. "How can I help, William?" "She's been a bit, bored lately. I've set my heart upon a gift for her, and I believe that you know where I could find it." Even before he spoke the words, he could see awareness in her eyes. She knew what he was after. "Freya's strand," he confirmed in a low voice. She frowned. "You're insane." "Now come on, love. It's dear old William you're talking about. Don't tell me you don't know where it is, because I know better. Always been a bit of a hobby for you, hasn't it, keeping track of such things? I want the necklace of the Breesings for Drew, and I'll have it with or without your help." "A grand quest for your lover, then," she teased. "How romantic." "Something like that," Spike snarled. Adrien regarded him steadily. "And how am I to benefit from this information? A bit of knowledge which, as I'm certain you know, could get me killed." "Do you still hold a grudge against the Master?" Spike asked, well aware of the answer. She froze, stared at him with profound suspicion. "Nest? You're going to tell me where to find Nest if I tell you where to find Freya's strand?" "Exactly." He watched her turn the offer over and over in her mind. When the moment of her decision arrived, he saw that there as well. But he had known from the start what Adrien would say. He had made her, after all. "The demon Skrymir has it," she revealed. With a grunt, Spike furrowed his brow. "You know of him, then?" "Heard of the bloke, yeah. Who hasn't? Wasn't sure if he was real, or still alive if he was." "Oh, he's real," Adrien told him. Her smile was even more condescending than her tone. "He has been alive since the time of the necklace of the Breesings was forged by the gods of the North Country." "I don't believe in gods, not of any country," Spike sniffed. "As you will. Whatever these creatures were, they were as real as the trinket you seek. I can tell you how to reach Skrymir, but he will not relinquish it to you. Your journey will be hard and will gain you nothing." Satisfied, Spike leaned back into his chair and gazed levelly at Adrien. "I'll make a bargain with you, girl. You tell me how to find the crusty old bastard, and I'll worry about getting the bloody necklace from him." Her eyes grew stormy a moment, but then the storm passed. The lineage behind Spike was long, but the Master was a part of it. Adrien had tried, once upon a time, to use that bloodline to become a part of the Master's circle, the Brethren of Aurelius. He had spurned her, hurt her, left her to die in the sun. But she had escaped, and she had been hunting him ever since. It would not be long, Spike knew, before Adrienne discovered the Master's whereabouts on her own. For now, though, he turned her ignorance to his advantage. She told him how to find Skrymir's lair. Though they had no map between them, her instructions were very precise. He committed them to memory. As she spoke, he watched those lovely full lips move, remembering why he had turned her in the first place. Not for love, of course. He loved no one but Drusilla. But those lips had their attractions. "Now, where do I find Nest?" she demanded. Spike smiled. "All right then, pet. I'm a bit parched yet. Just give us a moment." He held up a hand to gesture to the waiter, who had been keeping a respectful distance. The waiter noticed and began to approach, unaware that the signal had not truly been meant for him. In the foyer of the restaurant, a woman screamed and began to faint, her skirts flying up in revelatory fashion. Her black tresses cascaded across her pale features, and she convulsed on the floor, tearing obscenely at her breast. "Dear God, she's having a fit!" the mayor D shouted, and ran to kneel by her. Every single patron turned from their dining partners and their red and bloody meat to stare in fascination at the scene unfolding near the entryway. All save Spike. Adrienne glanced away only for a moment, long enough for Spike to withdraw the long, thin, tapered wooden stake from inside his sleeve. She began to turn back toward him just as he thrust it across the table. Her perfect lips formed a stunned little O as it plunged into her chest and punctured her heart. She exploded in a cloud of ash and dust. It smelled of damp wood and spices. He paid for the drinks, stood, and walked up to the foyer. The maitre d' nearly fell backward, so shocked was he when the contorting woman simply sat up, grinning madly. "There were bleeding children in my wine," she said, her smile impossibly wide, the smile of a hungry tiger. "I was choking on them, but I'm better now." Spike bent to help her to her feet, dusted her off, and kissed her full in the mouth. "Off we go then, love." They went out together, all the patrons of Keen's staring after them. Outside, with the cold wind still blowing, they ran together, laughing wildly. "She told you, didn't she?" Drusilla asked. "The birdie whispered in your ear." "That she did, love, that she did. We're off to Norway." Drusilla paused on the sidewalk, an almost comical expression of concern on her features. "Oh, Spike, are you sure it's safe? There will be war, you know. A real one. Now all this posturing and chest beating. Any day now. I had a vision of tin soldiers on fire, and the sky was raining babies. I told you, remember?" "Don't give it another thought, Poodle," Spike said happily. He pressed his face to her cheek, then nuzzled into the nape of her neck, nipping her there with his teeth. "You're the cream in my tea, Drew. Always. My sweet one is going to have her heart's desire, and that is simply that. If it's to be war, all right then. Let's go to war."